Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, is Omicron coming to a neighborhood near you? If Roe V. Wade is overturned, how will it affect Maryland? Is Thrive 2050 designed to destroy the suburbs? And remembering former police chief Charles Moose. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by civic activist Cary Lamari and Secretary of the Maryland Republican Central Committee, Mark Uncapher. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Just as Montgomery County residents were accepting the fact that there's been a slight uptick in COVID transmissions, the national media became all a Twitter over the newest COVID variant, Omicron. Sounds like the name of a transformer, Megatron. But how real is the threat? Mark, since December 2019, there have been 13 variants of the COVID-19 variant virus. Who can forget Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Lambda, or Mu? We're now down to Omicron. Why is it getting so much attention?
Well, that is an open question. And I have to say, I've kind of scratched my head on this and really kind of lost patience, if you will, when I listened to Dr. Fauci explain. Now, we've banned travel from a variety of countries that have not had any cases. Although I think at this count, and I'm probably raising by the hour, there are 23 countries that have had it. And quite candidly, there was really no good explanation as to why we're banning travel from countries that don't have the disease yet. So I confess to say that I am maybe a little skeptical that some of the hype that we've heard so far has not yet been justified by actual information.
Yeah, the Delta variant was originally prominent in India. We didn't ban travel from India. I'm not quite sure why there's this overreaction. Cary, while infection rates have increased, hospitalization rates have not spiked to the same degree. In fact, here in Montgomery County, we're at the lowest utilization rate since April of 2020. It seems that government officials and the media are overreacting. And, is this just a Chicken Little situation? The sky is falling?
I don't think so. I mean, within a week or two, we're going to reach an 85% vaccination rate. We should be proud of ourselves in Montgomery County. The reality is Omicron was discovered, or it came to be on November 9th. The World Health Organization announced it on November 29th. The reason why we've had these shutdown for travel is to try to steal time. We need the time because we don't know anything about this disease. So I don't know.
Well, look, I don't want to downplay the seriousness of Omicron, but it seems to me that from the early reports out of South Africa, is that those people who ended up in the hospital and with serious complications were unvaccinated. And so True. That if we're at 85% vaccination plus natural immunity, we have to remember that America should be in pretty good shape. I want to go on to our next topic, which probably is deserving of as much time as we can talk about it. And that's the Thrive 2050 Montgomery County, which is the most recent proposal to reimagine the suburbs of Montgomery County, and is set to be voted on by the county council very soon. Cary, there was a listening session this past Tuesday. What was the outcome?
Not very good. I mean, like this entire process, the counties kind of excluded the public and made it more difficult. When we testify, it's not 3 minutes we get 2 minutes. This past listening session came out on the day of Hanukkah, right? 50% of the people that requested to testify, they were turned down. They testified on the planning draft proposal, but this is the Fed committee proposal, totally different document supposedly, but we lose our rights apparently. And out of that listening session, a great many people who were approved to testify didn't testify because they were observing Hanukkah. You know,
So,
throughout this process, it's been like this.
well, I think that's the key point. And I think, many people who have been following this issue for the last 2 years feel that this plan came about during the COVID session, when people were hunkered down and thinking about other important things and not zoning issues or reimagining the suburbs. And really, the public hasn't been bought in on this. And Mark, one of the key components of Thrive 2050 is to encourage affordable housing. But when you read through it, how is that going to be accomplished?
Well, it's built from a premise that I'm not sure that stands up to scrutiny, that the price of the affordable housing will be cheaper by converting existing land to multiple dwellings. The market is going to respond. And I take the example that's sometimes cited by the council members of Pike and Rose, which is those are expensive houses. Expensive is certainly market rate and appropriately so. But I think it's being oversold, this idea that somehow costs will be lower because of higher density. That does not stand up to scrutiny. I'd also point out, across the street from where Casey is, I'm not sure I'm giving it away, there's a lot of former commercial land that's available in Montgomery County, not single family homes, that's available for development that might be appropriate for allowing for multiple dwellings. And that could well be, and it's something which there's more buy-in from the public than this plan to strip away so many single family homes.
Well, I'll just a comment on the White Flint development plans. The White Flint development plans still have a large amount of commercial office and lab space, as part of their program, and not as much residential as you might once think. But Cary, I want to go to you and real quickly. One of the disturbing trends that we saw in the run-up of housing prices this past year that we heard about was how big corporations are buying up residential houses and keeping people out of the market. Will this 2050 Thrive plan address that issue about developers buying up residential?
No, in fact, it changes our direction from the wedges and quarter plan. When you talk about the market, it creates an entirely new market of developer and speculators that are buying up old existing homes, displacing people, or has the potential to do that, and building these multiplex housing units. If I'm a business person and I own a residential property, that in, let's say, Wheaton or Glenmont or whatever, and I, instead of renting it for $1,500 a month, and I can get 3 units for $1,800, $2,000 a month, I'm going to do it. And that's what this market does. That's what this new paradigm of growth does. It alters the reality. It brings in international investors and national investors. And, they said it's exclusionary zoning, but the same developers and realtors that created that exclusionary zoning in the 40s are now using that argument to create this new paradigm of growth that will actually displace people of color, white people. Anyone who's in the lower economic rung, I'm sorry, it makes it more difficult for you.
Well, I want to follow up with you on this because,
Sure.
minority home ownership has increased in Montgomery County since 1970, when it was only 10%, to 43% today. It would seem to me that the market is adjusting, and isn't the market going to solve this problem of economic segregation?
A lot of scholars, that address upzoning would argue that if you use upzoning as a tool, right, and don't try to blanket upzoning and target it where in areas where you can say create affordable housing, yes, then the market would react. You got to remember, we've already got 44,800 development units approved in the pipeline. That's housing for over 100,000 people right there. And they've targeted it, or they have identified 85,000 additional units here in Montgomery County. That's before we do any upzoning. So,
Well, it occurs to me that the population of the county is also changing. I mean, we are no longer a majority white county.
right.
And I don't know if when you're looking at it in the faculty lounge that comes into effect. Mark, how does Thrive 2050 Montgomery interact with a Biden administration proposal called the Homes Act, which has been roundly unpopular with homeowners?
Well, you mentioned the faculty room issue, which is a kind of great way to describe it. Look, single family occupancy homes is really the aspiration of broadly among Americans. Obviously, there's room for others, but that is something that there is a great deal of support for, and which folks are willing to sacrifice either by long commutes or economic sacrifice in order to accomplish. And one of the challenges is among the faculty lounge set is there's a great deal of skepticism about that model. They would rather have people in more densely housing, more densely packed housing, and using mass public transportation, mass transit, as opposed to getting cars. And it flies in the face of what people actually want. And we see how people respond to that by leapfrogging to jurisdictions farther and farther away, Frederick County and even into West Virginia now.
So I'm a little country lawyer, and I do a lot of real estate settlements, and I do a lot of estate work. And I know how important to my clients that home ownership is, and
Right.
and especially new immigrants to the United States. They value their properties, and they want to make sure it can stay in their family. Cary, I'm going to let you have the last word on 2050 Thrive program.
Look, we need affordable housing. The COG report said that 75% of the future residents that are coming to the county are going to be in that lower economic rung. It's disproportionate between employment, we're growing at a 0.24%, and our housing rate, which we're growing at a 0.66%. That's problematic in and of itself because it's unsustainable. Look, we've got to be creative. We've got to find a solution, but a blanket upzoning, I'm sorry, it doesn't work, especially if we don't address the issues in the action report.
Well, no one likes my suggestion, which is open up the parts of the ag reserve for development. Look, Cary's shaking his head. Cary's shaking his head. So I know that's unpopular, but we all agree we need more density and we need more affordable housing. When we come back from this short break, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, how will it affect us here in Maryland? Stay tuned. And welcome back. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court of the United States heard oral arguments in a case challenging a Mississippi law that bans most abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy. According to political observers, the court seems posed to accept this standard, but you never can tell from reading those tea leaves. Mark, in 1973, the court found a constitutional right for a woman to have the right to an abortion. Since then, the court has been embroiled in endless litigations seeking to limit and expand the original Roe v. Wade decision. During oral arguments in the Dobbs case, the case from Mississippi, Justice Kavanaugh asked this question: why should the court be the arbiter of these things rather than the Congress or state legislatures? Is the court likely to overturn Roe?
I think we, at the very least, can acknowledge the fact that the science that was used for Roe v. Wade 48 years ago has changed. We've learned more, and our ability to address viability has changed over what is essentially 2 generations. So at the very least, I would expect to see some changes, although it's worth, and we'll talk about it, but it really is, at the root, is a question of where should the decision in this issue be made? Should it be made by legislature, or should it be made by the courts?
Well, I think there's 2 issues here. One is the fundamental constitutionality of the Roe v. Wade decision, which many legal scholars and particularly Justice Thomas has questioned as to whether or not that's fundamentally on sound foundation legally.
Right.
And then, of course, if the court does continue to allow the constitutionality of it, who is the right arbiter of it? So, Cary, in 1991, we're kind of unique here in Maryland. In 1991, Maryland codified Roe v. Wade, the Roe v. Wade ruling into state law. So if the Supreme Court does reject the constitutionality of Roe v. Wade and saying it's up to the states, how would it be affected here in Maryland?
If I could, I'd just make the observation that Maryland went beyond Roe v. Wade with that 91 law. So if it was left to the state, not only would the minimums, the standard of Roe v. Wade, in fact, because of the definition of long-term viability, that went beyond where what the national standard had been. But
so, Cary, are you back? Are you back on?
I am. It froze up. I apologize.
That's all right. So the question I asked you was whether or not there would be any effect here in Maryland if the Supreme Court undercut the Roe v. Wade decision.
No, there won't be. In 1991, we had the Freedom of Choice Act. The legislature put forward. It passed. It went to referendum a year later. It won overwhelmingly. The only question I have, and I talked to you about this, Casey, is how federal funding, maybe the Medicare funding aspects may come into play. But time will tell. But in Maryland, I think
I think you're right, because the Maryland law does permit or allow abortions up to the time of viability,
right?
And viability is defined in the state law as being a decision that's made by a physician. So it's different than the standards that we're looking at with respect to a strict number of weeks, which the Mississippi law and several others have imposed. And there is still also an exemption for the health and well-being of the mother.
Right.
So I agree with both of you. I don't think there will be any change in here in Maryland because of the codification of the law into our general health laws. And as to whether or not funding will be available through federal funds or not, that's will be something that'll be slugged out in the Congress, I presume, going forward. So let's go on to our next topic, and this is one that I think it's important to honor those that have served us in the past. And this week, former chief of police of the Montgomery County Police, Charles Moose, passed away. Chief Moose is best known for his calming influence during the sniper incidents of 2002, when John Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo shot 13 people in the region and killed 10 people in the region. And it all began here in Montgomery County. And we were gripped in panic for multiple weeks during that time period. And Charles proved to be skillful in his leadership during that time period.
Yes,
I happened to be a leadership Montgomery classmate of Charles in the greatest class leadership Montgomery class it had of 2000, the millennial class. Of course, we were the best. And I always appreciated his wry sense of humor, and particularly so when, after a long, grueling day of navel gazing, he summed up the session by saying that the class members needed to get out more and see the world beyond the kaleidoscope lens of Montgomery County. I guess he thought we were a little soft. Anyway, Charles Moose was 68 years old and survived by his wife, Sandy. Cary, any thoughts about Chief Moose?
All I can say is I'm very grateful for his steady help, hand at the helm. 23 Days of Terror in 2002, John Muhammad, Lee Boyd Malvo. What I've read is that Chief Moose was, very strong throughout the entire ordeal, except for when that young child in Bowie was shot. And that's when he broke down a little bit, but he never gave up. And 23 days, he brought some justice to the situation. So we all owe a debt of gratitude and appreciation for his leadership. And I thank him.
Certainly do.
And I thank the police department. I think that we need to recognize, this is an example of
Well, it was good policing that
Absolutely.
ultimately led to the revealing who the suspects were and their capture,
Right.
because they were parked in a rest area at the time, and it was good policing that led to their arrest. Mark, your thoughts about?
Well, I wanted to make just maybe a sort of remember something a little controversial, but I think Montgomery County did a tremendous disservice to Chief Moose. I recall that
oh yeah,
when he effectively was forced out as police chief, when he wrote a book about his experience, and the ethics interpretation from our ethics commission was that this was inappropriate, or with writing the book was inappropriate because somehow he was profiting on his experience as police chief. It's been almost 20 years now since then. I still think that was an incredibly inappropriate decision that was made, boneheaded, and it really cost us the services of somebody who really was admirable. It is a bad precedent too. I mean, if you've got officials that are doing a great job, if they can write on their own time about their experience, then God bless them. They should be writing books.
Well, you're right, Mark. In one sense, I mean, just think that if we had the same standards for our federal officials, we would have been spared books from Omarosa, and ultimately many who left the Trump administration who just wanted to get even the score. So just think, the New York Times, it would destroy the New York Times bestseller list. Amazon might go out of business if we had that standard. Who knows? Anyway, great memories of Charles. He was a really good man, and appreciated his service to all of us in Montgomery County.
absolutely.
Stay tuned for parting shots when we come back from this short break. Welcome back. Now with parting shots, Mark Uncapher.
Well, thank you, Casey. And I just wanted to do a little book recommendation. We were talking about Charles Moose's book. So this is the 5th book that former Governor Bob Ehrlich has done, original, unconventional, and inconvenient. And I will tell you, it's a side of Bob Ehrlich that's really kind of interesting. It's a very incisive book. And unlike the Omarosa and all the other books, it's a balanced book. It explains a lot about the Trump phenomena, but it is also in some areas very critical. It's a very balanced portrayal, and it's a worthwhile read.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Cary, Lamari, your parting shot.
Okay, I'm back to Thrive. In 2 weeks, I suspect the council may be voting on Thrive. And there is still this huge disconnect between Thrive and the action document. And for you people that need to know, if you care about an environmentally resilient community, equity, economic growth, transportation, that's all in the action document. That may not be, they're not voting on the action document. That may not be addressed for a year, 2 years, 5 years, who knows? New council. We're in trouble. We need your help.
Well, the rule at 21 this week is we don't comment on other people's parting shots, but I will comment on yours.
Go ahead.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think we need to pull the plug a little bit and slow the train down on Thrive 2050 until we have a better understanding of what it actually means to the citizens of Montgomery County, not just the planners of Montgomery County. And I want to thank you both for being here. Great conversation. We obviously have gotten over the Thanksgiving hangover. And so thank you for being there. And I thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.